My name is Mason, and this is your 2025 Tucson real estate market wrap-up and your January 2026 Tucson real estate market update. If I've ever had the pleasure of working with you or serving you and your family, then you know there are a few principles or a few foundational items that I tell every family I work with. Number one is I will tell you the exact same thing I tell my wife, my kids, my daughter, my mom, my friends, and family. I am not here to be a yes man. I'm always going to be brutally honest with you, and I'm never going to tell you something just to make you happy or just to earn your business. My job as your advisor is to tell you the truth, be as transparent and forthcoming as possible. And as someone who works with both buyers and sellers on anything from a $50,000 property out in 3 Points to a custom ultra luxury home in the Foothills and everything in between. I've worked San Manuel, Nogales, Oracle, Benson, Oro Valley, Dove Mountain, Tanque, Verde, Vail, you name it, I go everywhere. So I do have a wide range of experience in all homes, all real estate. With that being said, I want to give you what 2024 and 2025 looked and felt like. And now that the data is in front of me, a lot of families were spot on with what they felt, but not necessarily why they felt that way. Now, again, I'm a big numbers and data guy, and what I want to share with you is one of the biggest concerns and one of the biggest questions and really concerns that I heard from families, mainly from the 40 plus age demographic. And it was that this really feels like, or the last 2 years really felt like the market that was felt or similar in 2006, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we all know there was a big crash there. There's still a lot of lingering feelings and concerns from those years, and rightfully so. Now that I've seen the data, those families and those concerns were absolutely accurate. However, the factors that led to the same feelings were completely different, and here's why. In 2005 and 6 and all the lead up to the big crash and even after, lending practices were, let's just call it non-existent, right? The pizza man making $2 an hour could get a loan for $500,000 and end up losing his home just a few months later, right? You had no income, no job, applications being approved, and it was just the wild, wild west. Now, those lending practices are long gone, and now you need to do a whole lot more just to simply qualify for a loan. What was the same were the amount of homes sold, and this was very shocking for me to see. In 2006 to 2000, we'll call it 10, Tucson averaged about 7,500 homes sold a year, and that's pretty slow. At its peak, out of the whole history of Tucson in 2021, Tucson had 11,500 homes sold. Now that is record breaking. That is the biggest year Tucson has ever had. So the COVID pandemic years, rates were 3, 4, 5%. 11,500 homes sold. Since then, fast forward to 23, 24, 25, we are back in the same numbers that we saw during the big crash of 08, 07, 08, and 09. Over the last 3 years, 23, 24, 25, Tucson finished the year at around 74 to 7,300 homes sold. So with that, there is validation in that the market felt exactly the same from those big years during the crash. However, the economic factors, the lending practices, the real estate practices that were present then that led to that crash were not the same that led to the pullback in the amount of homes we saw that transacted. What that tells me is that consumers, shoppers, and sellers are a lot more aware of their homes and their equity, and they're willing to stay and weather the conditions as opposed to just throwing their home on the market and trying to move up and move on. Now, a lot of that is because some of us have super low mortgage rates. There's no way we're leaving a 2 to 3% rate to step into a 6 or 7% rate. But that aside, people have a lot more equity in their homes. They're not as upside down. Adjustable rate mortgages aren't as prevalent in the marketplace, although we are seeing them come back. And people aren't putting themselves in position to potentially lose their home. So again, all that to say, over the last 2 years, 24 and 25, the housing market felt sluggish and slow, and everyone who was concerned was completely valid. However, we have seen the resiliency of the market, of the economy. Homes have not stopped transacting. Sellers and buyers have just been a lot more reserved with their willingness to step into the market. Now, that's the amount of homes sold. And again, I'm just going to recap the major points for 24 and 25, because those years, if you put them side by side, they really parallel each other, and there's not a lot of difference between them. Looking at the average price point in 2023, the average price point for a single family home in Tucson. So if your zip code starts with 857, this applies to you. Your average price for a home in Tucson was $447,000 in 23. In 24, it went up a good bit to 472, and in 25, it stayed the same at 472. So literally from the data, we are seeing an exact parallel from 2024 to 2025. Now, lastly, and rightfully so, the busiest price point was anywhere from 300 to 400,000, and a lot of that is because those are good entry-level homes. We have a ton of new builds in Tucson. I mean, you can't go down a single street without seeing new construction, whether you're on the southeast, Marana, or the southwest. Homes are being built everywhere, and the busiest amount of transactions were in the $300,000 to $400,000 price point for 2025. Now, I want to give you a quick story on my experience and what I saw, which I believe is true for most people that were shopping over the last 2 years. And I had the privilege of working with 3 families. One of them was shopping for homes anywhere from $900,000 to $1.6 million. The next was shopping for anything from $500,000 to $700,000, and the last one was shopping for a home anywhere from $250,000 to $450,000. Now that gave me a good look at a large spread of homes throughout all of Tucson and let's call it Pima County. What every family that I worked with had in common, those 3 families in particular, is that we saw, let's take family A, 900 to 1.6 million. Not an exaggeration. We looked at no less than 25 to 30 homes, and we saw a ton of average homes. Family B, maybe 15 homes, 500 to 700,000, a ton of average homes. And the last family, and hats off to her, she is a very patient individual. I loved working with her, but we saw no less than 50 to 60 homes. Again, they were very average. Now, average to me, and most of you would probably agree, are homes that were, say, built in, let's call it 2000 or 1990, even 2010. And you walk in and not a single thing has been updated, not a single thing has been changed. You have the same flooring, the same carpet from when it was built. That is as average gets, right? You walk in, there's nothing exciting. I wouldn't necessarily call it turnkey. Are they livable? Sure. Are they falling apart? Not necessarily. But when you walk in and the water heater looks like it's a faded yellow because it's been there for 20, 30 years, the AC is rusted over, and every window has condensation in it, you're not going to get a lot of families wanting to write offers on those homes. And it was those homes that we saw a ton of. Walked into a ton and walked right back out because it was the same thing over and over. Now, fast forward to 2026, and we're only 15 days into the year, today being January 15th. I have checked the inventory every day since the new year, and it is so refreshing to see quality inventory hit the market. It shows me that consumer confidence, whether you're buying or selling, has now entered back into the market, right? They held on to their quality homes during the winter, and because the last 2 years have been slow, and people are now stepping into 2026 with a little bit of wind behind them, a little bit of wind in their sails, and saying, let's do it. I've seen some works of art hit the market at the $5 million price point, $2 million, $1 million, $200,000, $500,000. There are finally sellers, homeowners who have said, let's put the home on the market. We're feeling good. Now, I must say that like clockwork, Tucson is terribly slow during the winter months, right? We are a very seasonal market. But if you're a seller and you're looking at the data or want to maximize your profit, if you are a seller, and this is specific to sellers, best time to list your home is from February to June, right? Late winter, early summer, really in the springtime. You're going to have the most amount of buyers shopping, and you're going to maximize your profit during those months. Now, on the other side, if you're a buyer, if you mathematically want to try to get ahead, buy during the winter. Now, you are limited in inventory because we don't see as many homes hit the market during the winter months. I'd say anywhere from October to December, even early January. If you're a buyer looking to maximize your dollar, the winter months are going to be for you. So with 2025 out of the way, slow market, don't need to beat a dead horse. It was the same as 24. Rates were high. Buyers were concerned. Sellers weren't excited to put their home on the market. Fast forward to 2026, and we are seeing a large number of homes finally hit the market. And now 2026 and what I'm seeing, again, we're only two weeks into it, but when we look back at December, I was pleasantly surprised to see some of the numbers that were present in December. In December, and this is for single family homes in Tucson, so if your zip code again starts with 857, this applies to you. The total number of sales was up 5.2% from the same time in 24 to last month at 592 total sales. So again, a good bump from the year prior, which was actually made for a pretty busy December. The median price point for a single family home in Tucson came in at $368,000, only a 0.5% drop from the same time the previous year. And the average price point for a home was $468,000, a 0.6 drop from the year prior if we look at year over year. The median days on market did not move much. It was 33 days for the median, and the average days on market was just under 2 months at 56 days. Now, this was slower when compared to December 24. However, we did see more overall sales. So homes sat longer. However, we saw 5% more home sales year over year, looking from December 25 to December 24. If you enjoy price per square foot, the average price per square foot came in at $233 a square foot. That is down 2% from the same time the year prior. The next category I think is very important, probably not too popular of a category, but is the percent of list price received. If you list your home for $200,000 and you get $200,000, you received 100% of your list price. If you receive an offer at $198,000, then you receive 99% of your list price. With that being said, sellers saw negative 1.75% of their list price received. So let's just round it to 2%. On average, sellers got 98% of their list price received, which by that measure shows a pretty balanced market. No seller is making off like a bandit with $10,000 over asking or $40,000 over asking. The market seems to have leveled out pretty substantially compared to where it was a few years ago. Next is the amount of supply we have in Tucson. Right now it's at 3.49%. Typically, this would lend itself to more of a seller's market. However, because the quality of homes aren't really there in the inventory, we're not seeing a lot of homes fly off the shelf, and we're still seeing buyers being able to snag a significant amount of seller concessions that they can use towards closing cost or buying their rate down. So months of supply isn't great. However, homes aren't flying off the shelf, and it is still very much a buyer's market. Lastly, and this one took me by surprise, is the average price drop and how long it took for a home to drop their price. The average price drop in December came in at 6.4%. Taking 6.4% off your list price hurts. There's no other way to say it. This leads me to point out that if you're on the selling side, it is so important to be very intentional and very on top of the market and the trends and what's going on. So if you're not an active agent out there writing offers and working with both buyers and sellers, you're going to miss the mark on what an accurate price might be. I strongly encourage you, whether you're working with me or whether you're working with any other agent or whoever you're talking to, please do not take your Uncle Johnny's advice. Please look at the data. Please understand the comps in your neighborhood, understand what type of economy we're in. The pricing of a home truly matters. And if you want to avoid being a victim of a 6% price cut, be very intentional and realistic with your home price. Last but not least, and if you enjoy looking at the data and following the trends like I do, this last piece is where I rank the zip codes in a few different categories on how they performed. Number one is the most amount of sales, and number one came in with 44 total sales in 85747. So over on the east side, your Reeder Ranch, your southeast of Tucson, up and down Houghton. Again, that was first place for December. A lot of young families, a lot of new builds in that part of town. Second place was 85710 back to the east side at 35 total sales. And lastly, 85745 across town on the west side at 32 total sales. Next is the highest median price point for December, and that was in the Foothills, 85718 at $960,000. Second place was 85749, so going to the northeast at $752,000, and going back a little west to its neighbor, 85750, came in with a median price point of $745,000. On the opposite end of that scale is the most affordable or the lowest median price point. Number one was 85705, so over in central Tucson at $265,000. Second place was 85746 at $271,000. And lastly, coming in at third was 85711 at $278,000. The last category, the slowest days on market or the most amount of days on market, so you can just say the homes that sat the longest, was 85730 at 51 days. Second place was 85713 at 45 days. And going to the southwest of Tucson, 85757 at 43 days on market. Now, with days on market, I don't want to put any negativity behind it. It might mean that there just was so many homes that there was a lot to pick from and they're a bit more saturated, but ultimately homes moved a bit slower in those markets. The point of these videos is not to add in a bunch of fluff or to get you to get all excited and paint some picture for you guys that doesn't exist. I want to give you a realistic idea of what the markets look like. So whether you're buying or selling, or even if you don't have a real estate need in the world right now and you're comfortable with where you're at, or you simply have questions, you want me to look into your zip code, or maybe you bought your home 20 years ago and you have no clue what it's worth, shoot me a message, leave a comment. I'm happy to chat. I genuinely love what it is I do. So if you have questions, you just want to chat, or maybe you do have a move coming up, or you're considering a life change, I'd be happy to help. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.